Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and also joined by my co-host, Jacob Billington. And we also got a guest on the show today, Jim Bay. You've seen him on probably playoff previews, that other ones he's come on the roundtable before as well. Jim, how's it going?
It's going very well. Glad to hear you guys are doing well, and so happy hockey season started. It was just like it couldn't get here fast enough.
For sure. Or now, what, a day in 2 days? Well, a day. And then the Global Series. And there's a bunch
Yeah.
of games that are happening as we're recording as well, including your Senators, Jacob. So we'll try to get this show done so you can get to watching that. Yeah, let's jump right in. And I'll start with you, Jacob, on this one because it is a Senators related item. And that's Linus Ullmark signing an extension. We did talk about it on the last show. When that's going to happen, we weren't sure, but it's done. So, what do you think about the deal? Fact that he did sign really soon, before he even played a game in the Senators uniform, which he is doing right now. What do you think of the deal?
On the surface, it's a great deal. I mean, the AAV a little bit high, but that's what you kind of have to pay for a goaltender that won the Vezina a year and a half ago. And he's still in his prime, like he's only 31, I believe. And for 8.25, that's not terrible, especially considering the Senators have their whole core locked up for like he's the second highest paid player on the team. So having the rest of your core players under that outside of Tim Stützle, which is very understandable. It's impossible to be really upset with when you look at the bigger picture of all the guys that are signed. Um, on the ice, there's nothing to complain about having Linus Ullmark in there for 4 more years, so 5 years total. Senators finally like the last time they had a goaltender of his caliber was Dominic Hasek, who was 41 years old when Ottawa had him. So like even through the Craig Anderson years, like he was a little bit inconsistent. Obviously, he's a legend in Ottawa. He's great. He did wonderful things on and off the ice. He was not nearly to the caliber of Linus Ullmark is. And you think of all the success that Anderson had. He didn't come over until I think he was 28, 29 years old when he landed in Ottawa. Um, so there's still lots and lots of runway to have a very successful career in Ottawa for Linus Ullmark. The biggest thing for me is not what happens on the ice. It's off the ice. And that's showing that the newcomers aren't afraid of contracts in Ottawa. And
Mhm.
so we saw that with Alex DeBrincat. We saw that with Jacob Chikrin. Saw that with lots of people throughout the rebuild that just don't want to sign. Linus Ullmark did not play a regular season game for the Ottawa Senators before committing. That is huge for Ottawa. Obviously, that was the hope with Jacob Chikrin. It was always in doubt with DeBrincat. But with Chikrin, it was always like, yeah, it'll probably get done. And then it just didn't work out and whatever. Linus Ullmark's really happy with what he sees, and he's more than happy to stick around. And I think that's going to set a precedent. I mean, some people will point to Claude Giroux and say he did the same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was a hometown signing. Dorian got a free ticket with that one, but Ullmark is the first big free agent, probably since Sergei Gonchar
Mhm.
outside of Giroux to just decide on Ottawa. And not that he was a unrestricted free agent, but he could have been. So I think it's just a huge precedent for the entire organization, top to bottom, and it all starts with Ian Lauer.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you make a good point with Allmark signing before he even plays a game, which is great because he doesn't. I mean, everyone thought maybe he'll see what, how the team's doing, and then commit or not. I mean, that's was the worry I think everyone was kind of thinking about. But now he is. I mean, he signed long term, and hopefully he does well, and hopefully his first game does well. Like he goes does well in his first game too. So there's no doubt on it. So we'll find out that pretty quickly. All right, Jim, I'll move over to you on the next goalie, which is Igor Shesterkin. He's turned down a massive $88 million offer, which is insane. I mean, the AAV on that's pretty big. Um, he seems to be wanting more money. First question is, when do you think this is going to happen and what the final number will be? Because he's going to sign with the Rangers. I don't think he's going to unrestricted free agency. Where's this number going to go?
That's a really good question. I think he's banking a lot on himself to say, let's get a few more games in and remind everybody in the Rangers organization exactly what I can do
Mm.
for you. 88 million, 90. I actually would not be surprised if it didn't get done this year. I would be surprised if he took it up to free agency, and I wouldn't be totally shocked to see if he tested the market a little bit. I think going out there and listening to other offers helps his value. And he came out after all of this and said the right things to the New York press. I love New York. I love playing in New York and things like that. It's tough to play in New York. It's a very, demanding city with, a press that's always on you, like everybody sees in, the Canadian cities. Um, there's that thought in the back of their mind that he might just want to do that, maybe he might have enough of New York, and he might want to see how the team goes this
Mm.
year. They've had some very talented teams. They get to the edge, and all of a sudden they fall short. And the window for them with their core players and some of that stuff is closing a little bit. Not totally. They also have cap issues. So there's a confluence of things like, yeah, we may see 100. This may end up going to 100. He may want to hit that 100 mark
Mm.
before he signs, but there's that thought in the back of my mind that we might be waiting until free agency hits.
Jacob, do you think that may happen? Will he move to free agency? I know there was rumors that or not rumors, but they're saying that he's not going to negotiate during the season. Does that change throughout? Do you think he's going to sign during the year, or will it kind of push to free agency?
When I hear they don't negotiate in the season, I don't believe it at all. And what I think it means is that they're not going to set a meeting. They're not going to sit down, talk
Right.
back and forth. I think it's going to be December, January, February, sometime around then. The Rangers front office is going to go to Shesterkin's agent and say, "Listen, we have this offer," and he's going to say, "No, like
Mhm.
that's not what I want." And then a few months or weeks or days later, they're going to say, "Well, how about this?" No, that's not what we want. How about you give me this? No. Okay. Then like it's just going to be really quick. This is what we have. Do you want it or no? Or this is what I want. Are you going to give it to me? No. Okay. No negotiations back and forth. It's just going to be offers. And
Right.
I think they will figure something out. If I was to put a date on it, I would say before the All-Star break or the Four Nations face-off.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean the thing is the Rangers that this is their franchise goaltender. I mean I don't think they want to have him hit free agency because the team will pay him. I mean there is going to be a team that'll pay him that money. I look at what Bobrovsky got when he entered free agency at that point. And I mean it's going to happen. I think he's going to sign with the Rangers. It's just when, and that's going to be something that's going to hang over. I mean, I wouldn't want it to hang over my head if I was just Shesterkin. I'd want it done. So we'll see. We'll see how it all goes.
I heard one really frustrating stat yesterday, and that is that since the 2005 lockout or 0405 lockout or whatever, the New York Rangers have had either Henrik Lundqvist or Igor Shesterkin start at least 30 games every single season. They've had 30 games of a generational
Yeah.
goaltender. That's so frustrating for 31 fan bases. Outside, well, I would say outside of Boston, because
Yeah.
Boston's had that good streak too.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. Like I say, once Lundqvist retired, I'm like, well, they have Shesterkin. It's like there's no like middle part where they lose like Brodeur when he retired. There wasn't anyone to take over that was like him, and of course they haven't had one since. Yeah, it is tough, and same thing with the Canucks with Luongo. I mean, he moves on. They don't have anyone. I mean, Demko's good, but he's not Luongo. So I mean, it is frustrating to see those two right back to back, and you'd have no lull at all.
And my little thing with the free agency is that going through, let's call it, not to make the trauma of never thinking that Steven Stamkos was going to leave.
Hmm.
Mhm.
A team like that, and
Yeah.
Shesterkin the same way. You don't think he's going to leave. He doesn't want to leave. Maybe he doesn't want to leave. Um, but things happen,
Yeah.
and you know, that's just still sitting in the back of my mind that if Stamkos can go from Tampa, Shesterkin can go from New York too.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll just have to wait to see if how long this draws out, and if it goes past, I think the All-Star break. That's I think where you're going to think, okay, looks like he's probably going to hit the free agent market and see where it happens. I mean, he could still re-sign with the Rangers. It's just
Yeah.
when that'll be. All right, quickly, just a quick news note on we talked about it on Prospect Corner, but the NCAA CHL vote, which is now being pushed to November. They had a meeting on, could have happened today as we're recording, not today, Wednesday, that it could have happened, but they pushed the vote. Um, just quickly, Jacob, what do you think about if it does go through as a vote? How big will it be for, all the levels that players from CHL could end up in the NCAA?
Well, I think a very recent example, and you might have already talked about this exact example on Prospect Corner. I haven't listened to the episode yet. Quentin Musty, he requested a trade from the Wolves, and they don't want to trade him. So right now he's just kind of sitting at home, seeing what's going to happen. We were talking in the group chat, and it sounds like his best option is going to be to go to Europe and play, or just wait for Sudbury to budge on that. But in this kind of scenario, if he decides that he wants to go to the NCAA, like I don't know exactly how it's going to work and how it's going to look. They probably just can't say I'm going to pack my bags and go to the NCAA today, but it gives them more options. And right now, Quentin Musty doesn't have any options. He does not want to go back to Europe and play, so he's just sitting at home.
Yeah. We did talk about Musty, not about with the NCAA. That's actually a good point. I mean, he depends on when this comes into effect.
Yeah.
Where it could happen, I think probably would be next season if they do vote on in November, say yes, they're allowed.
Or
Or
even longer,
probably,
honestly.
yeah, it could be. I mean, it depends on when they kind of put that into effect because they'd have to drop a lot of stuff to kind of get that going. Jim, do you have any thoughts on the NCAA vote there?
Yeah, well, here the NCAA is changing so much in all of the sports when, name, image, and likeness hit
Mhm.
and the money started coming in. It impacted every sport, not just football and basketball. It impacted everything. Probably have, the most popular NIL person was a gymnast from LSU, Livy Dunn. It's just very interesting to see how this whole landscape is changing, and I'm not surprised that hockey's going to be a part of it. Will it be a good thing? I don't know. For the players, it might be. So you have somebody like Musty who now has options,
Mhm.
but I think we're going to just have to wait and see, um, how it actually, gets worked out and what actually happens in the process, down the road. Because even in football, they're continually making changes to
Mhm.
things. The transfer windows and stuff, it changes like every year, and they kind of have to fix it on the fly. So I'm a little skeptical how this is going to work for everybody, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see because I eventually think it will happen.
I think they will vote on allowing it because I mean it's been so long that it hasn't been allowed, and I think it will probably get voted on that they'll allow CHL players. And like Dayton said, he doesn't think it's going to be as massive as everyone's thinking it is. It's just some players will have more options to do it, and not everyone's
Mhm.
going to just exodus of the CHL. It's not
Yeah.
everyone's not just going to go to the NCAA because there is benefits to being in the CHL too. So we'll see how it all kind of plays out. All right, quickly let's talk about some trade rumors. Timothy Liljegren is apparently on the market because I mean the Maple Leafs have seems like he has no place in the lineup now. Jim, what do you think? Does Liljegren get traded? Where do you think could be a destination for him?
Yeah, I think he's going to get traded. I think that we're in one of these situations where, it's just good for both parties to move on. I think it'll be good for the player to move on. He seems to be buried in the depth chart. And I definitely think there's a bunch of teams out there that have cap space, that have, some draft capital that would make, a good play without player. The first thing I thought of was, I wonder if the Blackhawks, kick the tires on him because their defense is, you know, pretty poor. I mean, even though they made some additions, they still have some ways to go, as we saw a couple of nights ago. with their defense. Uh, I haven't really heard that much. It's been kind of like just, in the rumor, but, there's a good handful of teams like the Blackhawks and, maybe even some contenders that'll say, hey, we could use him as some nice, blue line depth and there'd be a good destination. But I think at this point, almost any other place in the NHL is, going to benefit him. And it's just whether or not somebody's willing to give, Toronto what he's worth in order to make that happen.
I don't think they're going to get a lot for him. I mean, he's a good defenseman. I don't think he's getting what Rasmus Sandin got when they traded him to the Capitals, first round pick. I don't think they're getting that. So I mean, he's a guy that could be useful on a team, and we'll see who goes. Jacob, but what do you think about Liljegren? Is he someone that could garner more than mid round draft pick? Where do you think he could go?
I don't think I could see a second round pick being the incentive to take him on. And there's one team, every time Liljegren's name comes up, I think of the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
Who better to play behind and learn from than Evan Bouchard at this point in his career? I mean, Liljegren was on pace for 35, 38 points last year.
Mhm.
Only played in 55 games and it still scored 23 points in those 55 games. So he does have the offensive instincts. He can move the puck well. And he's not atrocious defensively. I mean, it's obviously he's not a shutdown defenseman. He's not Jared Spurgeon, but
Mhm.
that offense and that right hand shot are valuable assets. And I think a team like Edmonton, who currently has their right side is Travis Dermott and Ty Emberson behind Evan Bouchard, like they could sure use an upgrade. And I'm sure they're not super comfortable with Darnell Nurse and Brett Kulak being their
Yeah.
bottom four as well. Um, I could see them any defenseman that comes up, I'm going to be thinking of the Oilers, but I think specifically Liljegren would work really well behind Bouchard.
Yeah, I think that is a team that seems to come up a lot with Liljegren. I think well, with any defenseman, it seems like it's on the market or even free agency. The Oilers need to do something, and of course, we'll talk about their first game in a minute. Jim, I know you wanted to talk about some other news, so I'll give you the floor there.
Yeah, I just, wanted to mention there's a couple things that popped up in relationship to, Tampa that I cover. Of course, they just got their second major hurricane in a short period of time. Quite a bit of damage. From what I'm hearing, Emily Arena was spared a great deal of damage, but I just found out a couple of hours before they aired that Saturday nights was supposed to be the first home game with Carolina will be postponed.
Mhm.
I have not heard about a date or anything. I think they're just looking for options. So in the meantime, the Tampa players left town on Monday with, eventually their families, and they went to Carolina, to Raleigh, where the Carolina Hurricanes had hosted them, allowed them to use their practice facilities, assisted them in helping, their families find places to stay. And it just got me thinking about the last time it happened with Tampa 2 years ago when Nashville opened their arms, to Tampa. And then this year, how, the NHL reacted to the Goodrow brothers. And it just got me thinking what a wonderful community the NHL and hockey is. I
Mhm.
mean, for somebody who follows three of the four major North American sports very closely, I think hockey and the NHL almost hands down is the best for that. And I think that I just wanted to use this, platform to say that, to mention it. And it just, it's that really feel good thing. And it's not something that's been in the press a lot. Nobody is really, and it's not something that anybody's putting out. But I think it should be known what other teams do for other teams in times of trouble.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing in hockey. All the players, of course, get involved in the community, and it's all really great to see. And yeah, that's some devastating damage that's been happening for those hurricanes. I mean, I know the Trop was really damaged there,
Yeah.
got the roof ripped off. So it's like, it is. Hurricanes sure do a lot of damage through when they run through there. So Yeah, hopefully not. There's not a lot for people. I mean, of course, a lot of people are displaced, and hopefully everyone's okay, and that they can go back to their homes, and hopefully there's not as much damage as there is, right? So, Jacob, you have anything else you want to mention before we move on?
No, I don't think I can follow that up. All I can really say is I live in Nova Scotia, and the hurricanes that we get here can be very disastrous,
Yeah.
but they're much more aggressive down in Florida. So I can only
Yeah.
imagine what's going on there.
Yeah, I went out to the families that have been affected by it because it's not fun. It's not something you want to wish on anyone to have to deal with because it is. I mean, some people's homes are completely gone, and
Hmm.
that's yeah, it's heartbreaking to watch for sure. All right, let's move to some, the games that have happened. Yesterday had pretty much, as we're recording, had a lot of the Canadian teams in action, had their first games. Of course, tonight there's a few more Canadian teams in action too. So let's start with the American team, but because Utah had their first ever hockey game and they actually won and actually looked really good too at their first home game. Of course, they go on the road right away. They they have one home game and they're out of there. Jacob, what did you think about? I don't know if you watched the game or saw any of the stuff, but what do you think about the atmosphere? Of course, they won their game. Dylan Guenther scores the first ever goal in Utah history. What did you think about it?
I think it wasn't even just the on ice. I think you got Shabuzi outside putting on a fantastic concert. There was tons and tons and tons of people outside enjoying it. And then you go inside, and I don't know if you guys saw it today, but they announced there was $120,000 in beer sales at the game. So like you just know that barn was rocking, and that's a record number for the Delta Center, which is incredible. So. Yeah, it's the atmosphere, the idea of being at that arena, it just gives me goosebumps. Like how loud it was on the screen, how it just enjoyable it was for everybody that was there. And obviously they get the win and Dylan Genther has a two-goal performance.
Yeah.
So yeah, hard to complain about that.
Hey Jim, what'd you think about that game?
Oh, it was a fantastic. I agree. It was a fantastic atmosphere. Utah certainly got the boost in the first period from the energy from the crowd. I mean, you can feel it, you can see it, watching it. I was extremely impressed with their owner. I saw his interview before the game, and that's the second time I heard him. I heard him before he owned Utah. He was on 32 Thoughts, and he just sounds like a guy like he gets it. And man, I think I would be very happy for him to own any team that I would follow or want to be a part of. At least that's where we are initially. So, I think he's going to be good for Utah. I think he's going to be, good, if not great, for the NHL. And it was a fantastic night, even though they beat my Blackhawks. You go, okay, that's fine. You got your thing. You got it. We got 81 more games.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I saw. I mean, it's great that they won their first game, and of course, the young guns were the reason they won too. So that's great. And yeah, I think Utah's going to be a good team this year. I mean, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. So I'll have that question later on. But all right, well, let's move to the first Canadian team that didn't have a good first game, and that is the Edmonton Oilers. Apparently, the favorite to win the Stanley Cup gets shut out 6-0, their worst home opener ever. I Jim, should Oilers fans be panicking with a 6-0 loss to start the season? I mean, of course they lost last season as well, their first game, 8-2 to the Canucks. So, and we all know what happened after that. Should everyone be kind of panicking right now?
Absolutely not. This team's going to be fine. That's a blip in the radar. Look, we know, who you should be worried about is Chris Knobloch, because what happened last year when they got off to the slow start, they got themselves a new coach.
Yeah.
Um, that's who I'd be more worried about. Am I worried about this team? No, no, that's a blip. That's, you hate to see it. You don't like losing your home opener for anything, and especially by that score. They'll be just fine. There's nothing to worry about. Don't panic. Overreaction Monday, you're good. Good. They'll be fine.
Jacob, what'd you think about the Oilers' performance in that game? I mean, of course, you don't want to start the season like that, but is there red flags already?
I think you look at kind of like how Jim mentioned about last year with Chris Knobloch getting hired and whatnot. You just it's going to be fuel to the fire, and they're going to go on another 16 game win streak if they start. Like, there's no reason to worry about the Edmonton Oilers. There's like it could have been a 14-0 loss, and I wouldn't care.
For sure. There was a debate. Now I'll talk about the Canucks. What's worse, losing 6-0 or getting or having a lead and getting and losing after having a multi-goal lead? I That's what happened to the Canucks last night, and that was the Canucks had a 4-1 lead. Calgary Flames came storming back and won in overtime, 5-4. Or 6-5 actually, because it ended up was crazy at the end. So yeah, 6-5. I Jim, should Canucks fans be worried at the beginning here, basically reverting back to how they were a couple seasons ago, where they started the season off just blowing leads left and right? Should they be worried that last season was just a blip?
A little bit. I think, like you pointed out, a couple years ago when they were blowing leads, you don't want to see that trend. You don't ever want to see that
Mhm.
trend. I can't. It just the thing that makes me so mad about any team that I follow is blowing a good lead when you know they have the capability to hold on to that lead. It wasn't tenuous or anything like that. So it should be a little worrying. Um, Once, okay, we'll let it go. You might have had some high energy from, the start of the game, the beginning of the season, and then you get a little bit of a crash on the first night. Let's talk again in November to see what they're like. And then, I think we can put out the panic button if this trend continues.
Yeah, I mean, the Canucks had a great first period. I mean, they probably looked like the team from last season, and then they just fell asleep. The second and third were horrible. They didn't play well. They couldn't connect on passes. It looked very sloppy. And I'm a little worried on that. I mean, it did revert me back. It made me flashbacks to those games because they did blow so many leads, multi-goal leads in that first month. That was just insane. And yes, they got a point out of this, but they got to fix a lot of things. And another one is Artur Shilov's allowing a bunch of goals from distance, which he's had a bit of problems with since the playoffs too. And everyone's worried. It's like we need Demko back now.
My
And
fantasy team is worried too.
yeah, right. But I mean, Shilovs is still, you got to think about it. He's still a rookie and he has not played many games in this league. And I think he'll fix that. I hope he can fix that, or he won't last in this league very long because you teams will just figure that out. They'll just throw the puck from the point and he'll probably score. That's not a good thing to have as a book on you. Jacob, what do you think about the Canucks performance in that? I mean, I guess conversely, the Flames, which
That's the point I was going to make
some,
is
I
for
would
every
think.
blown lead is an epic comeback from another team. And the Calgary Flames, a team that everybody's already counted out. They've got some quality veterans on the team, a lot of young guys. They're just in the murky middle right now, probably closer to the bad bottom, I guess, just to keep the enunciation there. But they fought back. They did not give up. Dan Vladar started the game pretty shaky, but he got them back in it. He made the saves that he needed to make at the end of the game, and at the end of the day, one goalie just needs to make one more save than the other, and that's kind of what happened there. Connor Zary with an absolutely gorgeous overtime goal. Like just this, the Flames team just persevered and they got back, and I give them full credit as well. Like, y yes, you can point to the Canucks, and obviously Matthew, you cover the Canucks and you follow the Canucks, and you have the jersey hanging behind you. So that's obviously going to be your perspective is that they blew the lead and whatnot. But for every blown lead, there has to be a mountainous comeback.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, give the Flames credit. They stuck to it. They could have folded after that, getting down 4-1. And of course, they were out for blood too because Kevin Rooney gets hit by JT Miller. Was not a dirty hit. There was no problem. But you hate seeing a player go down, and they were angry about it. Anthony Mantha, I new signing with the Flames, sure endeared himself to Flames fans, I'm sure, for that game. So yeah, it was a heck of a. I don't know. I think there were some good things the Canucks did bring. I mean, Quinn Hughes still looks like a Norris Trophy candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, that last play of the game where he blocks the shot from the empty net and then just no time fires it up to JT Miller and with no problem at all. And he's just he's going to be a Norris contender throughout his career, and that's just it's not going to end. I just before we move on, I hate it that everyone is not even putting him in the Norris conversation right now. There's
Mhm.
so many predictions out there. Evan Bouchard is on it, and Quinn Hughes just won the Norris, yet he's not on a ballot right now. It makes no sense to me at all. All right, quickly, I mean, the Maple Leafs are now, of course, scored their first two goals of the season now. So they did get shut out by the Montreal Canadiens 1-0 on a great goaltending performance by Montembeault. Jim, what do you think about the Canadiens' performance in their first game? I mean, of course, they got outshot pretty crazy, but they won their first game. They are up as we're actually they're not anymore. It's tied with the Bruins in their second game here. But what do you think about the Canadiens and the Maple Leafs yesterday?
Well, I'm sure Montreal fans were ecstatic for winning, that big rivalry game. Um, and we're probably equally as impressed with the team. I think Sammy had, good defense in front of him too.
Mhm.
I'm happy, to see him doing well. I mean, he spent a year in Syracuse. I didn't get to watch him in person because he was here when COVID, forced the AHL to shake up some of their, teams, and he was, with Florida at the time, and Florida and Tampa went together, and it was cool to watch him on TV, and I was able to snag one of his game used jerseys. So I followed him a little bit, and I'm really happy he's finding a place that I think, he wasn't going anywhere, in Florida. He's not, replacing Sergey and the other places. So it's good. He always had the reputation of somebody who had the potential to be at least a very solid goaltender. And I think, he's going to find that in Montreal. And I think Canadian fans, should be, feeling pretty good about that and hoping, his, progress continues. For Toronto, like I said, it they're not happy about being shut out, and they shot a lot, but it's Toronto. They have so many ups and downs through the course of the season. That's just one of the downs. Like you said, what are they tied now or something? Or they did
They're,
get two goals,
they're up 3-0 now, so
up 3-0. See, they'll be fine. That's a big game. Lots of emotion when those two teams play. So you know Toronto will be fine, and I think Montreal should be, their team and their fans should be, hoping that things are going to be starting on an upward trend, for them and starting in net.
Mhm. Yeah, Montembeault had a heck of a game. I think the Maple Leafs did play pretty well. I mean, they outshot him pretty handily. So yeah, and now there may be some worry that Markstrom has got 3 goals against him for the Devils after having a really good global series. So so early in the season to jump to conclusions about all these things, but that's what we do. It's just how it goes. All right, well, let's do our quick fire here now. And as speaking of jumping to conclusions and stuff, like this is what we do. I mean, this is like part of the fun. So I'll start with this one. Jacob, should Anthony Stolarz be the number one in Toronto after a pretty good game in his debut?
Uh, undoubtedly 100%. And that's only because of Joseph Wall's injury concerns. He's only got like what 36 games under his belt, and he's already an unreliable goaltender just with his health. Like when he's playing, he's good. And when he is healthy, maybe you do ride with him. But over the course of a season, I think you're gonna look back and say Stolarz was the starter, if not the 1A. 1A, 1B is kind of how I think the whole season's gonna go. But if you were to put the label of a starter on one of the movie Stolarz, I don't remember. Was it last year or the year before that he had like a 932 save percentage as a backup? And it was like 24 games or something like that. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he just had an outrageously good season, and people were like, he's a backup, didn't play 30 games. Should he be in the Vezina conversation because he was that good? Like that was a genuine question people were asking. I don't think he got any votes, but like he was talked about in the Vezina, and he only played 20 some games. So like he has that potential. Now he's never played a full season as a starter or split a full season, but it'll be really interesting to see kind of where they go from there. But I think as of right now, I mean, Dennis Hildeby's playing tonight, but that's on
Yeah.
the back to back. So I think you run with Stolarz whenever you can.
You agree with that, Jim? I think Stolarz should be the more number one rather than the 1A, 1B.
I think as long as he's playing well, I think what Toronto do if Wool gets healthy, Jacob talked about the 1A, 1B. I think that should be fluid. I think if you find a hot goaltender, ride him until something happens. And then you have the other guy who's a 1B, if they have back-to-back nights, you've got somebody you can rely on. But for now, I wouldn't disagree with the fact of him being the 1A or the starter, until something happens otherwise. When you got a situation with two goalies like that, ride the hot one,
Yeah.
and he's playing really well. Ride him and until something happens.
I'm always of the belief of you win, you're in. And I think, you just keep the same goalie until they lose, and then the next guy comes in. I mean, that's how I would do it as a coach,
Yeah.
but you ride the hot hand and let them keep going. And that's always been my thing. All right, I'll stick with you, Jim. I know it's a small sample size, one game, but looking at Utah, are they a team that's built to be in the playoffs? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of competition in the Central Division, but do they have a team that could?
Well, I think you mentioned a thing about the competition in the Central Division. I think if Utah is going to qualify for the play on paper, they don't have the team to do that. If they have a handful of players that kind of overachieve, hit some points or goals or whatever that they haven't done before, they got a chance. But the other thing that has to happen is I think some of the teams, for whatever different reasons, would have to come back to them because there's so many teams really on paper that ahead of them that are better that it would be really difficult for them to qualify for the playoffs as things stand right now.
Do you agree with that, Jacob? Or do you have you think Utah could make the playoffs?
I I know you're not asking my full predictions here, but I just have to work it out in my head here. So you got the Pacific. I have Vancouver, Edmonton, and Vegas. Those are the locks. So that's three of the spots. Then you got Dallas, Colorado, Nashville, and the Jets. So that leaves one spot open. And to me, it's gonna be between Utah and LA.
Hmm.
I'm not huge on LA this year. I think they have a lot of things to deal with. I think Utah can make it over LA. You look at last year, and they were, I don't have I don't have the stats right up in front of me, but they were pretty well in a playoff spot January, February. They had an outstanding start, and then all the noise started about Anthony Morello and all the ownership stuff and their arena and all this, all the noise started. And it was as soon as that stuff started, they went on what was it, a 14 game losing streak,
Yeah.
and they lost their chances. I think they can do it this year. Dylan Genther takes another step. Logan Cooley takes another
Mhm.
step. Clayton Keller is the captain. You're riding the magic of Delta Center,
Yeah.
right? And Ryan Smith. I think they do it. I would, if I was to put money on a list of teams to make the playoffs right now, they would be in it.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see how Utah does in their second game, as tonight against the Islanders.
I feel like that was really condescending. Well, we'll see how they do in their second game.
Yeah, it's our second game ever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, Utah, I think, is a really exciting team. I've always loved their young players. I mean, Dylan Genther, of course, was one of my targets when the Canucks had the pick before they traded it. So I mean, I love him as a player. I think he's one of the more exciting players, young players in the league. So I'm excited to see what Utah does. I think they can as well. It just depends on the competition, like I say, around them and how everyone else does, because it's going to be tough for playoff spots. I mean, everywhere, right?
Do
So
you still lose sleep over that trade?
I do every time Dylan Guenther scores a goal. So and Ekman Larson is not on the team anymore. So yeah. All right. going to Montreal, and of course they're playing tonight as well, and they're now still tied 2-2 now. Um, Jacob, I mean, Lane Hutson is not on the first unit power play. There's already been talk about why is Mike Matheson on the first unit when you have a dynamic defenseman like Lane Hutson? He should be quarterbacking the power play. Do you agree he should be quarterbacking it right now?
Buckle up, Habs fans. I'm about to make you mad. So no, and when I see people suggesting that he's going to contend for the Calder, I don't see it. Obviously there was a highlight going around yesterday of him beating out John Tavares in he like some great skating and did some great skills. He didn't do anything though. John Tavares kept him to the outside along the boards, and then it led to a turnover. Like, yeah, he did a couple nice pivots, and he was quick on his feet and had good angles. And I get that it was only his fourth NHL game or third or whatever. He didn't do anything. Like, I don't understand why that clip was going viral. And people are like, "Oh yeah, he's totally winning the Calder, and might as well give him the Norris." He didn't do anything. So I think he can still keep it for Matheson. I would be fine to see him both of them on the top unit. Just to give some extra offense to the top because I mean it's no secret, especially without Line, Montreal doesn't have the most offensively gifted team. So if you want to slide Lane Hutson in there as well, I think that makes sense. But I don't think giving him the reins of the top unit makes sense. If you look up Mike Matheson's stats here, I don't know exactly what he had. I'm just going to pull this up here. He had he had 62 points last year. Like
Mhm.
it's not like this guy is it's not like you're putting Jaden Struble up there and he's getting 13 points on the year or something like that. No, like it's Mike Matheson. He proved that he can be a fantastic defenseman last season. So yeah, I don't see why Lane Hutson would take over that first position.
What do you think, Jim, about Lane Hutson taking over the first unit power play QB?
No, not yet. He's 20 years old with what, four NHL games. Look, and I know he had a couple good games at the end of last season when he came up and he looked really good in preseason. But look, teams are going to start getting tape on him.
Mm.
They're going to start figuring some things out, about his game at the NHL level. And, he's going to go through a lubricant. He's going to be just fine. Relax, had fans. I love the kid. I think he's going to be great. Not now. Give him some time. However, if I were coaching the Canadiens, every once in a while, I might put him
Mhm.
on that first unit just to give him that experience and
Right.
see what he can do, knowing that at some point in the future, he's going to be that guy to, captain, that to quarterback that power play squad.
I agree. I think it may be a bit too soon to throw him to that, throw him into that
Yeah.
responsibility on the first unit. But I mean, he's got a ton of skill. He's no Quinn Hughes. He's not Cale Makar. He is not at that level. But I think he's going to end up being a really good offensive defenseman in the NHL. It's just a matter of it's not right now. I mean, he is very dynamic. His skating is top notch. He's got that super, edges and all that stuff. But I don't think he's ready to be in that position yet, too. So keep him on the second unit. I mean, he deserves to be on the power play, that's for sure, but not the first unit. All right, before we move, just quick games to watch. Let's do our one up, one down for the last few days. Jacob, what's your up down right now?
I'm gonna give my up. I think I did this last time too. I'm gonna go for Homer pick, and I'm gonna say the Ottawa Senators with Linus Ullmark. I mean, it's hard to dispute that. And just the contract. I already talked about the impact that it's gonna have on the ice and off the ice. So yeah, I'll go with that. My down, I'm gonna go with Raphael Lavoie, because he is a suitcase at the moment. This is today was the third time he was waived in the last 5 days. He was claimed by Vegas and he was reclaimed by Edmonton. Now he's back on waivers. Uh, yeah, I don't think it's anything against him because he's such a bubble player that they don't want him in the roster, but teams do want him. He's valuable,
Yeah.
and that's why they keep claiming him. It's just quite the scenario. I wonder how long this is going to go on.
He just keeps going on waivers.
All season.
Oh my God. Yeah. And Jim, what about you? An up and a down?
Oh, and up. Um, I got to give the up to the Utah Hockey Club and their fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was just phenomenal. I mean, you knew it was going to be big, but watching it, it was every bit as big. Kudos to all of you. I hope everything goes well. I think you're going to be great for hockey.
Mm.
Down. Oh, I hate doing downs. And I'm going to be. I'm going down on my Blackhawks as a team, even though I think Utah got a boost from playing that first game. As Hunter pointed out in his article that came out, the Hawks are still doing things last year, starting this year,
Mm.
that has led to slow starts and getting behind and losing games big time. They improved their roster. They have some strong veteran presence, and they've got to turn that around. They've got to be better on D. And read Hunter's article that came out. I don't want to repeat it. I'm just getting really frustrated now. So I expected improvement. Maybe it'll happen in the second game. Maybe the emotion of the Utah thing um, was more prevalent than what, because I wasn't there. So, but that's got to turn around real
Mm.
quick.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Utah had the boost of being at home for the first game and all that stuff. So we'll see how Chicago does in their second one. But I think they're a better team on paper. They look like they could be a pretty good team this season. But I think a lot of the new guys, again, when you add in so many new faces, you need time for them to acclimate and get into the system. So I always reserve judgment on every team until they hit the 20 game mark because 20
Yeah.
games, I think, is a good sample where you see how everyone's going, what type of trends are happening. I think that's when you start kind of panicking or being really frustrated with how things are going. Until then, but yeah, it's not a good start.
No, and my frustration is also personal because I'm in the middle of writing an article about how the Blackhawks can actually make the playoffs, and I can't make any of my points if they did nothing in that game that I think they need to do to make the playoffs. So I'm just kind of sitting on this article now, waiting for either a better game or a win where it'll actually kind of resonate with somebody.
Yeah, no, it's fair. That's for sure. All right, let's finish up with a game to watch in the next few days before we get back together on Sunday. I mean, of course, you can include the Sunday games because the episode won't come out till Monday. So Jacob, what's a game to watch in the next few days?
I want to give a nod to the Battle of Alberta that's going to be happening on Sunday. Edmonton, Calgary meet up for the first time this season. But again, I got to go with the Senators. But this time they're playing against the Habs, and that one speaks for itself with the way preseason went. So
Yeah.
just all the battles that happened, all the like, it's just I don't know. And Ottawa's beat Montreal. I don't think Montreal's beat Ottawa in a regular season game in like 4 years. So now's your chance to shine, Habs fans. There, you can come at me for that.
All right, sounds good. Jim, what about you? A game to watch?
Yeah, knowing that Jacob was probably going to take the Senators and Canadiens. I actually have a very good 1B. Utah is heading to New York City to face the Rangers.
Hmm.
As we talked about before, are they going to be a playoff team? How good are they going to be? Well, here's your first chance. You're going to play a really good team who could win the Eastern Conference this year and may have the best goaltender in the world. So this will be your first litmus test to see actually how well, even if they don't win, how well they can play
Mhm.
against a team of that caliber.
That's a big, I think that's going to be a big game for them to see yeah, where they are kind of, it's a good litmus test because I mean, the Islanders are borderline. I mean, it's not really a big test. And of course, Blackhawks we don't know what team they are right now. Yeah, that's going to be the first big test of their franchise history, right? We'll see how it goes. All right. Well, thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Jim, for coming on and talking a whole bunch of topics here. Senators are up 2-0, outshooting the Panthers 17-8 after the first period. So we'll see how the rest of that game goes. So I'll let Jacob get back to that. But thanks for joining us on another episode. We'll see you in our next one next week. But make sure to check out everything at hockeybears.com. We got recaps and takeaways and all that stuff after every game. So make sure checking out everything that we got going on the site and the Substack, and of course the YouTube channel. But until our next episode, we'll see you next time.